The doctors stopped laughing when the patient's seizures vanished in front of their eyes. And the only person who knew why was a 17-year-old girl they had just asked to leave the room. If you love powerful stories where the ignored become undeniable, hit like and subscribe now, because what happens next will change how you see wisdom, medicine, and who the world chooses to listen to. They called her Nia Holloway. Not Dr. Holloway. Not Miss Holloway. Just that girl. She stood quietly at the back of the emergency ward at St. Augustine Medical Center, fingers folded over a notebook that looked older than she was. The room smelled like antiseptic and panic. Machines beeped in uneven rhythms. A man lay strapped to the bed, his body convulsing violently, foam gathering at the corners of his mouth. Status epilepticus. That was the diagnosis. 3 neurologists, 2 toxicologists, 1 infectious disease specialist, and none of them could stop the seizures. Another milligram, one doctor snapped. "It's not working," another replied, frustration cracking through his voice. They had tried everything. IV benzodiazepines, anticonvulsants, cooling protocols, even induced sedation. Nothing held. The man's brain was slowly cooking itself. And Nia knew why. She'd known the moment she saw the color of his tongue. But she didn't speak. Not yet. Because she had learned early that being right didn't matter if no one believed you were allowed to be. Nia was 17, African-American, and officially just a pre-med intern observing under a special youth program for gifted students. Unofficially, she had been diagnosing illnesses since she was 9 years old. Her grandfather used to say, "The body whispers before it screams." Doctors listen for the scream. Healers listen for the whisper. Her grandfather, Elijah Holloway, had been a healer long before Google, long before hospitals, long before insurance codes and prescription pads. He never wore a lab coat, never held a degree, never once called himself a doctor. But people came to him anyway. From church basements, from trailer parks, from quiet houses where sickness lived like a secret shame. They came when the pills failed, when the tests came back normal, when the doctors said, "We don't know." Elijah always listened. He taught Nia everything he knew before cancer took him 2 years ago. The plants, the roots, the way illness changes skin tone before blood work changes numbers, the way toxins hide in plain sight. And the one rule he drilled into her head over and over again: never fight arrogance with noise. Let results do the talking. Right now, the room was loud with arrogance. "He's crashing," a nurse shouted. A senior neurologist, silver hair, confidence polished by decades of being obeyed, noticed Nia for the first time. "Why is she still here?" he asked sharply. "I'm observing," Nia said calmly. "This is a restricted procedure," he snapped. "We don't need distractions." She nodded, and took one step closer. That was when she smelled it. Not antiseptic. Not sweat. Something bitter. Metallic. Green. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her head like it had been waiting. "If the mouth smells like crushed leaves and the seizures don't respond, look for plant poisoning." Nia looked at the chart. Unexplained onset. No prior history. No drugs in tox screen. The doctors were searching inside the body. The problem was outside it. She followed the IV line with her eyes. Then the saline bag. Then the small paper cup on the tray beside the bed. Her heart skipped. The tea. Someone had given the patient herbal tea earlier to calm him down. The nurse had mentioned it casually. No one tested it. No one questioned it. Because hospitals trust what looks harmless. Nia knew better. "Excuse me," she said quietly. No one heard her. "I think the seizures are being caused by..." The neurologist cut her off without even turning. "Step back, please." "I'm serious," she said, louder now. "The tea." He finally faced her. And laughed. Actually laughed. "You think herbal tea is overpowering hospital-grade anticonvulsants?" he said incredulously. A few others smirked. Nia felt the familiar heat rise in her chest, not anger, not embarrassment, but something sharper. Resolve. "My grandfather treated something like this before," she said evenly. "It's likely neurotoxic glycosides from a wild plant. If we don't bind it, the seizures won't stop." The room went silent. Then came the scoff. "This is not a folk remedies class," the neurologist said coldly. "Security, escort her out." 2 guards moved. Nia didn't argue. She didn't shout. She looked at the patient one last time, his pupils dilated, his breathing shallow, his tongue still that wrong shade of greenish blue. He had minutes. As the guards approached, a younger resident hesitated. "Wait," she said softly. "What plant did you say?" Nia met her eyes. Wild foxglove variant, Nia replied. Grows in abandoned lots. Causes seizures that don't respond to standard meds. My grandfather taught me. The resident swallowed. The patient convulsed again. Harder. Alarms screamed. Try charcoal, Nia said quickly. Activated charcoal slurry. Oral if possible, NG tube if not. It binds the toxin. That's insane, the neurologist barked. But the resident was already moving. Give me 5 minutes, she said. If it doesn't work, we lose nothing. The neurologist hesitated. The patient seized again. Fine, he snapped. 5 minutes. Then she's out. Nia exhaled slowly. 5 minutes was all she needed. Because when wisdom is ignored long enough, truth doesn't knock, it kicks the door down. And what happened next would leave some of the best doctors in the city questioning everything they thought they knew. If this story already has you hooked, like and subscribe now. Chapter 2 reveals what happens when the charcoal enters the patient's system, and why the doctors suddenly stop laughing. At exactly 3 minutes and 40 seconds, the seizure stopped. No alarms. No convulsions. Just silence, the kind that terrifies doctors more than screaming machines ever could. The charcoal went in faster than anyone expected. The resident's hands shook slightly as she pushed the thick black slurry through the NG tube. The neurologist stood stiffly at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. Nia was already stepping back. She knew this part. Her grandfather used to say, once you give the body what it needs, don't crowd it. Healing is shy. The patient's body continued to convulse for a few seconds longer. Violent. Uncontrolled. As if the illness itself was fighting back, angry at being noticed. A nurse counted under her breath. 1, 2, 3. Then, nothing. The man's arms fell limp. The violent jerking stopped so suddenly that it felt unnatural, like a switch had been flipped. The monitors didn't scream. They steadied. Heart rate slowing. Oxygen stabilizing. Blood pressure leveling out. The resident froze mid-step. Did anyone change the meds? She asked. No, the nurse whispered. The neurologist leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Check responsiveness, he ordered. The nurse tapped the patient's shoulder. Nothing. She checked again, then gently lifted his eyelid. Pupils are reacting, she said, disbelief creeping into her voice. They are normalizing. No one spoke. In medicine, silence is rarely good. But this silence was different. This was the sound of a room full of people realizing they had just witnessed something they couldn't explain. The neurologist straightened slowly. That's not possible, he said, more to himself than anyone else. Nia stayed quiet. She had learned not to rush the moment. Because when people feel their certainty crack, they don't reach for truth, they reach for defenses. Charcoal doesn't act that fast, another doctor muttered. It shouldn't, the resident said softly. But something just did. The patient exhaled deeply. Not the shallow, panicked breaths from before. A real breath. The kind that comes when the body finally isn't under attack anymore. The nurse checked vitals again, then again, like she was hoping to catch a mistake. They are stable, she said. The neurologist turned slowly toward Nia. Not with anger. Not yet. With suspicion. Explain, he said. Nia hesitated. This was the dangerous part. Not the crisis, the aftermath. Because saving a life doesn't guarantee respect. Sometimes it only sharpens resentment. It's not just charcoal, she said carefully. It's timing. And exposure. She stepped closer to the tray where the teacup still sat, forgotten. Who brought this in? A nurse raised her hand. His wife, she said. She said it was a calming herbal blend. Chamomile, lemon balm, things like that. Nia picked up the cup and smelled it. Her face tightened. That's not chamomile, she said. The neurologist scoffed again, but weaker this time. And you can tell that by smell. My grandfather taught me how, Nia replied. This has digitalis-adjacent compounds mixed with a sedative herb. The sedative masks the bitterness. But once metabolized, it overstimulates the nervous system. Digitalis is cardiac, the neurologist snapped. Yes, Nia said calmly. But some wild variants cross the blood-brain barrier, especially when brewed too strong. The resident's eyes widened. That would explain why the tox screen didn't catch it, she murmured. They weren't testing for plant glycosides. The neurologist said nothing. He reached for the cup, turned it slowly under the lights. And you knew this, he said, voice low, because your grandfather told you. Nia met his gaze. I knew it because I've seen it before, she said. And because plants don't stop being dangerous just because they come in a mug instead of a bottle. The room felt heavier now. Not tense, unsettled. One of the older doctors cleared his throat. "We need to send this for analysis," he said. "Yes," the neurologist agreed stiffly. "Immediately." He turned back to Nia. "Who are you again?" She swallowed. "Nia Holloway," she said. 17. Pre-med intern. He stared at her like the words didn't fit together properly. "You don't have a degree," he said flatly. "No," she replied. "You don't have a license." "No." "You don't have clinical authority." "No." A pause. "Yet you diagnosed something my entire team missed." Another pause. And then, quietly, "Stay." The word landed heavier than a shout. Nia nodded once. She stayed. Over the next hour, the patient regained consciousness. Confused. Weak. Alive. He asked for water. The nurse nearly cried. Lab results came back later that night. Positive for plant-based cardiac glycosides. Exactly what Nia had said. The neurologist read the report 3 times. Then folded it slowly. He didn't apologize. Not yet. Instead, he asked a question. "Where did you learn all this?" Nia thought of her grandfather. Of the porch where they sat shelling peanuts. Of his hands, rough, steady, patient. He listened, she said simply. To people. To patterns. To the land. The neurologist nodded once. But something in his eyes had shifted. This wasn't humility. It was discomfort. Because medicine had rules. And Nia existed outside all of them. As the night wore on, whispers followed her through the halls. "That's the girl. The intern. The one with the charcoal." Some curious. Some impressed. Some irritated. And one pair of eyes watched her longer than the rest. Dr. Malcolm Reeves. Head of clinical research. A man known for destroying careers quietly. He leaned against the wall, arms folded, studying Nia like a problem he hadn't decided whether to solve or erase. He turned to a colleague. "She's dangerous," he said. "Because she's wrong," the colleague asked. "No," Reeves replied. "Because she's right without permission." Across the ward, Nia felt a chill she couldn't explain. Her grandfather had warned her about this part too. The moment you prove you know something they don't, you stop being invisible. And that's when the real danger starts. The patient slept peacefully. The crisis was over. But something much bigger had just begun. Because St. Augustine Medical Center was about to learn that wisdom doesn't always wear credentials. And some truths don't ask for approval before saving lives. By morning, the hospital had erased her name from the report. By nightfall, 3 new patients were asking for the girl with the plants. If you believe truth doesn't need permission to exist, like this video and subscribe now, because what Nia faces next is bigger than one hospital and far more dangerous than ignorance. The official incident report was clean. Too clean. Dr. Malcolm Reeves read it twice, then smiled thinly. Resolved seizure episode. Unknown etiology. Responded to standard supportive measures. No mention of charcoal. No mention of plant toxicity. And certainly no mention of Nia Holloway. She stood just outside the conference room as the senior staff discussed the case that had almost killed a man. Almost. Her name never came up. That was the first warning. The second came an hour later, when her intern badge stopped working on the West Wing doors. She had to wait for a nurse to let her through. Probably a system glitch, the nurse said kindly. But Nia knew better. Her grandfather used to say, when people stop looking you in the eye, they've already decided what you are. And this morning, I slid past her like she wasn't there. Except for the patients. The first was a woman in her early 40s, wrapped in a hospital blanket despite the heat. Her chart said chronic tremors, undiagnosed. She caught Nia's sleeve as she passed. "You're the girl," she whispered urgently. "The one who stopped the seizures." Nia hesitated. "I just helped a little." The woman shook her head. "I've been shaking for 5 years," she said. "They say it's anxiety. Or stress. Or nothing. But it burns inside me like ants. Please, just look at me." That word again. Look. Nia glanced around. No doctors nearby. She nodded once. They Saturday. Nia didn't touch the woman. She watched. The color of her nails. The faint swelling at the base of her neck. The way her tremors worsened when the window was open. "Do you live near water?" Nia asked. "Yes," the woman said quickly. "The river. Why? Do you drink from it?" The woman hesitated. Filtered. "But yes." Nia closed her eyes briefly. "Stop," she said gently. "Just stop." "Stop what?" Drinking it, cooking with it, bathing in it. The woman frowned. Why? Because there's something in it that builds up slowly, Nia said. It doesn't show on basic panels, but it irritates nerves over time. The woman's tremors worsened. I'm not crazy, she whispered. No, Nia said. You're poisoned. Nia wrote 3 plants on a scrap of paper. 1 to bind, 1 to flush, 1 to repair. Talk to your doctor, Nia added quickly. Tell them to test for heavy metals. The woman clutched the paper like a lifeline. 2 hours later, another patient asked for her. Then another. By afternoon, nurses were whispering again. Not laughing this time. Concerned. Curious. Uneasy. Dr. Reeves noticed. He called Nia into his office just before sunset. He didn't offer her a seat. You are overstepping, he said calmly. I'm observing, Nia replied. You are interfering, he corrected. You are giving medical advice without credentials. I tell people to speak to their doctors, she said. And yet, Reeves said, leaning forward slightly, people are improving. The word sounded like an accusation. Medicine has structure, he continued. Protocols. Liability. Control. Nia met his gaze. So does nature, she said. We just didn't invent it. His jaw tightened. You will stop speaking to patients, he said. Immediately. And if they ask me, you will redirect them, he said sharply. Or your internship ends today. Nia nodded. She left his office with steady steps. Her hands didn't shake until she reached the stairwell. Her grandfather's face rose in her memory, calm, lined, unafraid. They'll test you, he had said once, when she was 14. Not your knowledge. Your obedience. That night, something happened that changed everything. A teenager was rushed into the ER. 16 years old. Uncontrollable vomiting. Severe abdominal pain. Heart rate irregular. Doctors suspected food poisoning. Then appendicitis. Then psychosomatic reaction. Nia watched from the hall. She saw it immediately. The faint yellowing of the eyes. The odd sweetness on the breath. The way his skin looked bruised under fluorescent light. Liver distress. Not viral. Not bacterial. Chemical. The boy's mother was crying. They say they don't know what's wrong, she sobbed. Please. I heard about you. Nia looked toward the nurse's station. Dr. Reeves was there. Watching. This was the moment. Speak and lose everything. Stay silent and watch a child suffer. Nia stepped forward. What did he take? She asked gently. The mother blinked. Just a supplement. Natural. From the market. Nia's heart sank. Which one? The woman pulled a bottle from her purse. Nia recognized it instantly. Her grandfather had once thrown the same bottle into a fire. Who told you to take this? Nia asked quietly. They said it cleans the blood. Nia swallowed hard. It overloads the liver, she said. Especially in teenagers. The boy groaned. His monitor beeped faster. Nia turned to the nearest doctor. He needs binding agents and liver protective herbs, she said. Now. The doctor hesitated. Dr. Reeves stepped forward. No, he said firmly. We follow protocol. Nia felt something inside her settle. Not fear. Clarity. If you wait, she said evenly, he will go into liver failure within hours. Reeves stared at her. This is your final warning, he said. The boy screamed in pain. The mother sobbed. Nia didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She reached into her bag, pulled out a small packet of dried leaves. Her grandfather's last gift. I'm doing this, she said softly. And in that moment, a 17-year-old girl made a choice that would shatter careers, rewrite rules, and expose a truth the medical world was not ready to face. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing in a hospital is not ignorance, it's ego. Like and subscribe now. Chapter 4 reveals what happens when Nia breaks protocol and why the hospital will never be the same again. The machines said the boy was stable. His body said he was dying. Nia could feel every eye in the emergency ward turn toward her. Doctors, nurses, interns, and Dr. Malcolm Reeves, standing perfectly still, like a man watching a line finally get crossed. The packet in Nia's hand weighed almost nothing. Dried leaves, powdered bark, a mixture her grandfather had prepared years ago and taught her never to use lightly. This isn't medicine, he had said. It's mercy, and mercy always scares people who need rules to feel safe. The boy on the bed groaned again, curling inward, his hands clawing at the sheets. His labs are borderline, a resident muttered. We should wait. Nia shook her head. His body's compensating, she said. It won't last. Reeves stepped closer. You are not authorized, he said calmly. Step away from the patient. Nia didn't move. Instead, she turned to the boy's mother. Has he been vomiting black or dark green? She asked. Yes, the woman sobbed. All day. Does his pain spike after water? Nia asked. The woman nodded frantically. That's bowel reflux, Nia said. His liver's overwhelmed. Reeves raised his voice. Enough. Nia met his eyes. If I'm wrong, she said, you can have me removed, expelled, banned from every medical program in the country. A pause. But if I'm right, she continued, and you stop me, you own what happens next. The room froze. Doctors don't like absolutes. Reeves especially didn't like being cornered in front of staff. 2 minutes, he said sharply. 2. And then we follow protocol. Nia nodded. She moved fast. She mixed the powder with water, her hands steady despite the storm inside her chest. Activated charcoal to bind. Milk thistle to protect. A bitter root to stimulate bile flow. She had no measurements. No dosing chart. Just memory. And trust. She spoke softly to the boy as she administered the mixture. I know it tastes awful, she said. Swallow anyway. I need you to help me. His eyes fluttered open briefly. He nodded. The mixture went down. The room waited. Seconds stretched. A nurse checked vitals. Heart rate's dropping, she said, uncertain. But stabilizing. The boy vomited once, violently. Dark. Thick. Then again. And then stopped. His breathing slowed. Color returned to his face in uneven waves. The monitor beeped, not frantically, but rhythmically. A resident whispered, What the hell? Reeves stepped forward. Draw labs, he snapped. Now. They did. Everyone waited. When the results came back, they were undeniable. Liver enzymes, dropping. Toxins, clearing. The boy fell asleep. Not sedated. Resting. No one spoke. Then someone clapped. One sharp sound. A nurse. She stopped immediately, embarrassed. But it was too late. The spell had broken. Nia felt it. The shift. Not acceptance. Not yet. But fear. Because what she had just done didn't just save a boy. It exposed a flaw. Reeves turned slowly toward her. You got lucky, he said. Nia didn't respond. Luck doesn't repeat. Results do. That night, 3 more patients improved under Nia's guidance, quietly, unofficially, under the table. By morning, the administration called an emergency meeting, and Nia Holloway's name was on the agenda. Not as a success, as a problem, because when a system is built on hierarchy, a teenage girl with no credentials, and undeniable results, is not a miracle. She's a threat. Chapter 5 is where the hospital fights back, and where Nia discovers the real illness she's up against. The hospital didn't try to stop Nia by disproving her. They tried to erase her. The meeting was scheduled for 7 a.m. No invitation. No warning. Nia found out because a nurse slipped her a message written on the back of a glove wrapper. Don't trust this. Protect yourself. The boardroom smelled like coffee and polished wood, the scent of power deciding things quietly. Dr. Malcolm Reeves sat at the center of the table. Human resources on his right. Legal on his left. 3 department heads across from him. Nia stood alone. No chair. We're concerned, Reeves began smoothly, about unregulated medical activity. Nia folded her hands behind her back. I observe patterns, she said. I don't replace doctors. And yet patients are improving under your influence, a legal advisor said, like it was a charge. That's the goal, Nia replied. A few brows furrowed. Reeves leaned back. You're young, he said. Gifted, but dangerously overconfident. Nia almost smiled. Overconfidence didn't look like double-checking every breath. You violated protocol, HR said. Administered substances without approval. They were approved once they worked, Nia said quietly. The room stiffened. Reeves tapped the table once. We cannot allow medicine to become improvisational, he said. If we do, liability skyrockets. So does survival, Nia replied. A pause. Then Reeves delivered the real blow. Effective immediately, he said. Your internship is suspended pending review. There it was. The silence afterward was deliberate. Heavy. Final. Nia nodded. She had expected this. What she hadn't expected was the ripple. Outside the boardroom, the hall was full. Nurses, orderlies, residents, and patients. One woman stepped forward, the the one with tremors. My shaking stopped, she said loudly. For the first time in 5 years. A man raised his hand. My son is alive because of her. A nurse spoke next. We've been watching outcomes. She's right more often than anyone here. Reeves stood abruptly. This is not appropriate, he snapped. But the illness had already spread. Not the one in the charts. The one in the walls. Fear of being wrong. Fear of being outdated. Fear that wisdom existed outside the system. Nia felt something settle in her chest. Her grandfather had warned her. The real sickness isn't in the body. It's in the pride that refuses to learn. That afternoon, Nia packed her bag. She expected to leave quietly. She didn't. A journalist waited outside. Then another. Someone had leaked the story. A teenage intern healing patients with herbal medicine. The headline spread like wildfire. And St. Augustine Medical Center realized too late. You can silence a voice inside a building. But not once the world starts listening. Chapter 6 reveals the investigation, the backlash, and the secret Dr. Reeves never wanted exposed. The investigation didn't start with Nia. It started with a question no one wanted answered. How many patients got worse because the doctors never looked outside the body? The first call came from the state medical board. The second came from the press. The third came from a place that made Dr. Malcolm Reeves' hands finally tremble. Clinical compliance. They didn't ask about Nia first. They asked for data, outcomes, failure rates, unexplained recoveries, cases labeled idiopathic, doctor language for we don't know why. Reeves assured everyone this was routine. It wasn't. Because once you start asking the right questions, answers stop hiding. Nia wasn't allowed on hospital grounds anymore, but she didn't disappear. She worked from home, from church basements, from community centers, from kitchen tables where people brought records instead of hope. She never touched patients. She taught them how to ask better questions. What changed before you got sick? Where do you live? What do you breathe? Drink. Touch every day. Patterns emerged fast. Too fast. A cluster of unexplained nerve disorders, all near a chemical runoff zone. Recurring liver failure, tied to an all-natural supplement brand. Autoimmune flare-ups, linked to contaminated herbal imports. Things medicine hadn't bothered to test for. Because they didn't fit the models. Meanwhile, inside St. Augustine, auditors found something else. Charts rewritten after outcomes. Symptoms minimized. Environmental factors marked irrelevant. And at the center of it all, Dr. Reeves. Not falsifying data. Just omitting it. Correlation isn't causation, he told investigators smoothly. No, the auditor replied. But repetition is. The press ran with it. Teen healer exposes medical blind spots. Hospital ignored environmental toxins 4 years. Reeves watched his authority bleed out through headlines. He tried to regain control. Filed a formal complaint against Nia for practicing medicine without a license. It backfired. Public opinion flipped overnight. People didn't see a reckless girl. They saw a system punishing someone for being right too early. Then came the moment Reeves feared most. A patient died. Not from herbs. From delayed treatment. The family demanded records. Independent toxicology tests revealed plant-based poisoning, missed. Exactly the kind Nia had warned about. The hospital went silent. Boards don't panic loudly. They panic by cutting. Reeves was placed on administrative leave pending review. Nia received an email the same night. Short. Formal. We would like to speak with you. She closed her laptop and sat very still. Her grandfather's voice rose again, gentle and steady. Truth doesn't rush. It waits until lies collapse under their own weight. Tomorrow, Nia would walk back into the building that tried to erase her. Not as an intern, but as the one holding the missing piece. And the doctors weren't ready for what she would ask them to face next. Chapter 7 is where Nia returns, and the room finally listens. They didn't invite Nia back because they believed in her. They invited her back because the system was bleeding, and she was the only one who knew where the wound was. If you believe truth doesn't need age, titles, or permission, tap like and subscribe now. This chapter marks the turning point, and what happens next will shock even the people who doubted her the most. When Nia Holloway walked back into St. Augustine Medical Center, the building felt different. Quieter. Not peaceful, cautious. The same halls. The same lights. But fewer confident footsteps. She wore no lab coat. No badge. Just a simple dress and the same old notebook, its edges worn, its pages heavy with lessons passed down through generations. The boardroom was full this time. Not just administrators, doctors, researchers, state officials, and Dr. Malcolm Reeves' chair sat empty. That absence spoke louder than applause ever could. The chairwoman cleared her throat. "Miss Holloway," she said carefully, "thank you for agreeing to speak with us." Nia nodded. She remained standing. They had prepared slides, charts, data models meant to frame the conversation safely. Nia didn't ask for any of it. Instead, she asked a question. "How many of you were taught to ask where illness comes from?" A few hands went up, tentative. "And how many were taught to ask what the patient touched, breathed, drank, or trusted before the illness began?" Silence. Nia let it stretch. "Medicine is excellent at reaction," she said calmly, "but terrible at listening." A murmur rippled through the room. One doctor bristled. "That's an unfair generalization." "No," Nia replied gently. "It's an incomplete one." She opened her notebook. Inside were handwritten notes, drawings, lists of plants beside symptoms, patterns traced across years. "My grandfather taught me this," she said. "Not because he hated doctors, but because doctors didn't have time to listen the way he did." She looked around the room. "You save lives every day," she continued. "But how many do you almost save?" That landed. A toxicologist leaned forward. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Nia took a breath. "A missing department," she said. "Environmental and botanical assessment. Integrated, not alternative." A few eyebrows rose. "You want us to treat plants like pharmaceuticals?" someone asked skeptically. "I want you to treat exposure like pathology," Nia replied. "Plants, supplements, pollutants, household chemicals, cultural remedies. The things patients don't mention because you don't ask." A resident spoke up. "We don't have time for that." Nia met his eyes. "Then you have time for failure," she said softly. The room went still. She wasn't attacking. She was diagnosing. And that made all the difference. The chairwoman exchanged looks with the others. "What would this look like?" she asked. Nia turned a page. "Case reviews," she said. "New intake questions. Cross-disciplinary consults. And humility." That last word hit hardest. A senior cardiologist finally spoke. "You understand what you're asking," he said. "This challenges decades of training." Nia nodded. "Yes," she said. "So did antibiotics once." A few people smiled despite themselves. The meeting stretched for hours. Questions turned into discussions. Resistance softened into curiosity. Not everyone agreed. But no one laughed. By the end, the chairwoman stood. "We will pilot a program," she said. "Limited. Closely monitored." She looked directly at Nia. "And we want you to advise." Nia didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She thought of her grandfather. Of how he never asked permission to help someone in pain. "I'll help," she said. "But not alone." The chairwoman nodded. "Of course." "No," Nia clarified. "I mean the people you don't usually listen to. The nurses. The community healers. The patients." Another pause. Then, slowly. "Agreed." Outside the room, word spread fast. Nia wasn't back as an intern. She was back as something new. Not a doctor. Not a healer. A bridge. And bridges scare people who profit from separation. That night, as Nia walked out of the hospital, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. "You think this is over?" a voice asked. Calm. Controlled. Familiar. Dr. Reeves. "No," Nia replied honestly. "I think it's beginning." He chuckled softly. "You're opening doors you can't close." Nia looked up at the hospital lights glowing against the dark. "Good," she said. "Some doors should never have been locked." She hung up. Behind her, the system shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, but irreversibly. And somewhere deep inside St. Augustine, the illness that had nothing to do with disease was finally being treated. Like and subscribe now. Chapter 8 reveals the backlash, the threats, and the moment Nia realizes that changing medicine might cost her everything. The death threats didn't start when Nia challenged medicine. They started when medicine began to change. The pilot program launched quietly. No press conference. No announcements. Just a new line on intake forms. Environmental and botanical exposure. Most doctors ignored it. At first. Then the results came in. Cases labeled mysterious began resolving. Chronic symptoms eased. Readmissions dropped. And resentment grew. Not everyone wanted progress. Some wanted control. Nia felt it in the silence that followed her in hallways, in the way conversations stopped when she entered rooms, in the anonymous email that appeared at 2:17 a.m. You're embarrassing people who decide careers. She deleted it. Then another came. Stay in your lane. Then another. People disappear for less. Hospital security dismissed it as online noise. Her grandfather's voice did not. When truth threatens power, power growls first. The backlash escalated when funding shifted. Research money once earmarked for prestige trials was redirected toward exposure studies. Careers stalled. Papers delayed. A senior physician confronted her in the parking garage one evening. You think you're special, he hissed. This place runs on reputation. Nia met his gaze calmly. It should run on outcomes, she replied. He laughed without humor. You're going to get yourself hurt. That night, Nia returned home to find her door ajar. Nothing stolen. Just disturbed. Her notebook lay open on the table. A single page torn out. Not random. Intentional. She sat down slowly. Fear crept in, not sharp, not dramatic. Cold. Calculated. She called the one person she trusted completely. Dr. Lena Morris, the resident who had listened from the beginning. They are pushing back, Nia said. I know, Lena replied. I'm with you. That mattered more than Nia expected. The next day, an emergency hit. A patient in ICU. Multi-organ distress. Nothing working. Nia recognized the signs immediately. Rare plant-based neurotoxin. But this time, the attending physician refused to call her. Pride over protocol. The patient worsened. Lena intervened. Nia was brought in late. Too late to prevent damage. The patient survived. But barely. Nia stood outside the ICU afterward, hands shaking. This wasn't theory anymore. This was cost. Lives lived halfway because someone needed to feel superior. She went home that night and cried for the first time since her grandfather died. Not from fear. From exhaustion. From carrying truth alone. She considered walking away. Medical school. Safe paths. Silence. Then she opened her grandfather's notebook. One page stopped her. If you walk away because they threaten you, the sick will still suffer, and now you'll know you could have helped. Nia wiped her face. She stood. And made a decision. If the system wouldn't protect her, she'd go public. Not loudly. Not angrily. But clearly. And the world was about to learn what hospitals never tested for. Stay with me because Chapter 9 reveals the moment Nia speaks, and the truth can no longer be contained. Nia didn't expose the system with anger. She exposed it with evidence, and that terrified them more than any accusation ever could. If you believe young voices can change broken systems, like this story, and subscribe now. Chapter 9 is where everything explodes, and where silence finally loses. Nia didn't call a press conference. She didn't post a rant. She didn't name enemies. Instead, she released a document. 4 to 7 pages. No opinions. No insults. Just patterns. Cases anonymized. Timelines aligned. Environmental exposures mapped against symptoms. She called it the illnesses we don't test for. Within 12 hours, it was everywhere. Medical forums, university group chats, public health boards, community pages. Doctors didn't know how to attack it, because it didn't attack them. It simply asked questions they had avoided for years. Why did unexplained seizures cluster near abandoned lots? Why did liver failure spike after certain supplements hit the market? Why did treatment succeed only after exposure stopped? Hospitals hate two things more than lawsuits: patterns and witnesses. The response was immediate and chaotic. Some doctors dismissed it as correlation theater. Others read it quietly at night and felt something break open. Residents shared it anonymously. Nurses printed it. Patients recognized themselves in the pages. One comment went viral. This paper explained my illness better than 10 years of appointments. Another followed. Why were we never asked these questions? St. Augustine Medical Center issued a statement. Carefully worded. Non-committal. But behind closed doors, panic was loud. Funding partners called. Regulators demanded clarification. And one name kept coming up. Nia Holloway. Dr. Reeves reappeared, not publicly, but strategically. He filed a formal ethics complaint. Accused Nia of data manipulation. Of practicing medicine without authority. Of endangering patients by popularizing unverified methods. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Especially when an independent panel reviewed the document. Their conclusion was short. The data is sound. That sentence changed everything. Because now the story wasn't a teenage girl versus doctors. It was evidence versus ego. Medical schools reached out. Public health agencies requested briefings. A historically black university invited Nia to speak, not as a curiosity, but as a contributor. Nia stood at the podium that day with trembling hands. Not from fear. From weight. "I'm not here to replace doctors," she said. "I'm here to remind medicine of something it once knew." She paused. That healing doesn't begin in the prescription pad. It begins in listening. The room rose in applause. Not thunderous. Respectful. Earned. But backlash didn't disappear. It sharpened. An article appeared questioning her grandfather's background, calling his methods dangerous folklore. Nia read it slowly, then closed the page. She knew this tactic. If you can't disprove the truth, discredit its roots. That night, she visited her grandfather's grave. She sat cross-legged on the grass like she used to as a child. "They are coming for you now," she whispered. The wind moved gently through the trees. She imagined his smile. "Good," he would have said. "That means they finally see you." The next morning, the final blow landed. Dr. Reeves resigned. Not quietly. Publicly. In his statement, he never mentioned Nia by name. But he admitted to institutional blind spots and a failure to adapt. The system didn't apologize. Systems rarely do. But they shifted. Hospitals nationwide began updating intake protocols. Supplement disclosures became mandatory. Environmental screening entered pilot stages. And one phrase started appearing in medical journals. Holloway factors. Nia didn't celebrate. She slept for 12 hours straight. When she woke up, her phone was full. Messages from young students. From girls who looked like her. "I didn't know I was allowed to know things differently." That one stayed with her. But something still lingered. One last chapter unfinished. Because changing medicine wasn't the point. Saving lives was. And there was one more patient waiting. One case that would decide whether Nia's work was a moment. Or a legacy. Like and subscribe now. Chapter 10 is the ending, and it brings the story full circle, back to where it all began. The final patient didn't come to test Nia's knowledge. They came to test whether the world had truly learned how to listen. The call came just before dawn. Not from a hospital. Not from a university. Not from the press. From a small rural clinic 3 hours away. "We don't know who else to call," the nurse said over the phone, her voice thin with exhaustion. "Everyone says it's stress. But she's fading." Nia sat up slowly. "How old?" she asked. 16, the nurse replied. "Same age you were when this all started." That detail settled heavily in Nia's chest. She packed her bag without thinking. Her notebook. A few plant samples. A photo of her grandfather folded between pages. The clinic was small, peeling paint, outdated equipment, overworked staff. The girl lay on the bed, eyes half open, skin dull, breath shallow. Doctors had run every test. Everything came back normal. Nia sat beside her and did what she had always done first. She listened. Not to the machines. To the girl. "What changed?" Nia asked softly. The girl swallowed. "My grandma moved in," she whispered. "She makes tea every night. Says it keeps bad spirits away." Nia closed her eyes briefly. "What kind of tea?" The girl described the plant. Nia felt the answer settle into place. Heavy, familiar. A plant that healed in small doses. Destroyed slowly in large ones. Accumulation. Not illness. Exposure. Nia turned to the doctor. "This isn't anxiety," she said. "And it's not psychosomatic." The doctor hesitated, then nodded. Because this time, the system didn't fight her. They tested. They confirmed. They treated. The girl recovered. Fully. When it was over, the girl grabbed Nia's hand. "Why didn't anyone else know this?" she asked. Nia smiled sadly. "They weren't taught to ask," she said. The clinic director later asked Nia a question she had heard many times by now. "What do you want to be called?" he asked. "Doctor. Researcher. Specialist." Nia thought for a long moment. Then she answered honestly. "Someone who listens," she said. Months passed. Then years. Medical schools adopted new modules. Hospitals hired exposure specialists. Community healers were invited, not ridiculed. Not everywhere. Not perfectly. But enough. Nia never rushed credentials. She earned them slowly. On her own terms. When she finally walked across the stage to receive her medical degree, the applause wasn't loud. It was deep. The kind that comes from understanding. She visited her grandfather's grave that evening, set her degree gently against the stone. "You were right," she whispered. They listened. Eventually, the wind moved softly, and for the first time, Nia felt something she hadn't felt since childhood. Peace. Not because she had won, but because she had stayed. Stayed when it was easier to leave. Stayed when fear got loud. Stayed when truth was lonely. And because of that, countless people would never know how close they came to being ignored. They would just know they were healed. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think differently about wisdom, healing, and who the world chooses to listen to, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let us know in the comments. Do you believe real wisdom always comes with a title, or sometimes with listening? Because stories like this remind us of one truth. The world doesn't change when the loudest speak. It changes when the right ones are finally heard.